State Representative Rick Edmonds is a Republican from Baton Rouge. Hey, Mr. Rick, welcome to KEEL. How you doing this morning?
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing?
Let's start here with Medicaid. Correct me. I saw the article. I read a couple of things last night, and I saw a number, and let's start here, that I just found staggering. Combined federal and state spending on Medicaid last year in Louisiana was $15 billion. Did I see? Is that number right, or was I a couple of glasses of wine in and made a tragic misread?
Unfortunately, you were reading it correct. We now are averaging overspending about $1 billion a month just on Medicaid in the state of Louisiana. That's all of our money. So it's really, it's really hammering our budget.
Now, pardon me just a second. Aaron's jaw is somewhat agog. Well, let's drop it a little further.
Whoa.
The governor wants to spend another $1 billion this year. Administrator, the Health and Human Services Director,
Rebecca Gee,
wants another $1 billion. Have I got that number right too?
That's correct, and that was the subject matter I brought up this appropriations meeting hearings on Tuesday. Is that they were asking for an additional $1 billion, and so. I just had a round of questions to say, if you guys are going to come and ask for another $1 billion, you've got a lot of questions to ask, and a lot of it's about what's going on in the program as it relates to fraud, which is absolutely out of control.
Now, Mr. Rick, let's be fair. This is combined state and federal money.
It is.
But let's also point out that in the scheme of 50 states, Louisiana is second. We are second most dependent in the country on federal money. Now, go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, and so those numbers, you're right. So population-wise now, we have 1.6 million people plus on Medicaid. And since Governor Edwards has taken over, that means of that 1.6, he has added over 500,000 to the rolls in his administration. So that's how we've come to this. It's a very large number.
Should some of those be off the rolls, or are some of these fraudulent?
Well, what happened is that we have been, since this has been going on now, it's not a new question we're asking. Since 2016, we have been asking them to go back through a variety of ways, more than one way to take or steal money through fraud. One is recipient fraud, which is what you just asked, which means people make out an application and then they put down their income. And if they put the income as, say, a family of four at $35,000, well, they qualify. So just recently, they have now found through, through our push, that the first 30,000 of them were kicked off the rolls because they were making too much money. Tuesday, we had 1,600, and I think it was 52 or somewhere in there. Don't hold me to it. It's over 1,600 that made over $100,000 a year. One particular recipient made $145,000, and oh, by the way, John Bell's salary is only $130,000, which means somebody was on Medicaid in Louisiana that made more than what the governor makes as literally his total salary.
You asked some questions. You asked some questions that included words like not only overpayments, kickbacks.
That's right.
What do you mean by that? This sounds dastardly.
Well, it is, because there's two different main categories. One is recipient fraud, which means that's the person that goes and tries to get the funds for themselves or get on Medicaid. And then there's the other area, which is huge, is providers. And so across the nation, there are probably 10 at least common types of Medicaid fraud. In other words, and I just use the word steal. People figure out how to steal the money. So I asked them questions. Could you give us, of these top 10 categories, give us the percentages of how we're improving, because they say we're doing so good. Well, a kickback, according to the national survey, means a provider may conspire with another provider to give a kickback, which means money, gifts, or products when they receive a referral from the other provider and use their product and services. So they get in on the game. So
is anybody investigating that?
Yes, they are. U.S. Attorney's Office is doing it. I've been meeting with them, and several of us have been. And we have a Medicaid fraud unit that is under the Attorney General's office. And so what I did was on Tuesday, I started asking some of these particular questions, like double billing. That's one everybody, I think, really understands.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a provider and you want to steal money, what do? Well, you find a legitimate or illegitimate recipient and take their Social Security number or their name or however you got them on their record, and you double bill them, and you do it over and over and over. And we've got that going on. Every state has this stuff going on. It's not just Louisiana. This is going on nationwide. According to governmental statistics, this is going to be $1 trillion problem when you talk about what we're paying to Medicaid, and hundreds of millions, if not billions, are going nationwide will be as it relates to fraud.
Mr. Rick, the Edwards administration, the governor, Secretary Gee, how have they been helpful in this regard? Are they going, yeah, we got a problem here and we need to look into it? What's their response to all of it?
I'm going to give you a quote that you can go back, and on Tuesday, as I brought up each one of these categories, and oh, by the way, they either to their credit or not, when I asked the question, how are we doing with double billing? I would think that you ought to know, you've got 3.5 years worth of data. You should know how you're doing of managing this $15 billion. You ought to know if you're telling the state we're doing great, well, and you want another $1 billion to spend, if you're coming to the table with that, you ought to be saying, I need this $1 billion because, man, we're doing an awesome job. That's just the way I think. It's simple thinking. So when I asked them these questions as it related to fraud, they said, oh, we don't have the answers to that. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we don't have the answer to that. So they're supposed to bring it back the 16th. We're going to start over on this line of questioning. But one of Dr. Gee's quotes, she said about all this fraud that I'm asking about, she said, it's only a few egregious, areas. And I totally disagree with that. I think this is hundreds of millions of dollars in Louisiana that's going right out the door, that we're just not doing administratively what we need to do to make sure that Louisiana's tax-paying dollars are going to where the money needs to go. So, and let me say one other thing, because now you got me on the soapbox. Those that are condemning guys like me, I'm on appropriations. That's responsible for the money.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that some people in Louisiana aren't getting cancer screens or help with their, any kind of issue. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that while that might be going on in the scope of health care in Louisiana, at the same time, hundreds of millions of dollars is not getting to the working poor. Mm-hmm. It's getting to somebody's pocket that's stealing the money. That's the way I think. I really believe that's the truth, and I'm going to continue to dig.